I just want to stick to a couple of basic questions while we have the group. And that is, since this is a beginner, I know Erin, Nate, and Jason. So I'm Frank Giardina, and I've had the pleasure of working with Terry and with Erin, previous lives. And what I really want to understand is, when you started this whole venture, how did it start? Was it an operational deficiency? Did somebody come along and say, we just can't run these reports, we can't get this data, and then it starts to snowball? Or was it more of a peer pressure? Your boss comes and says, everybody's doing this, we ought to do it, right? Or there's some champion in the organization. Somebody said, I did some research, I found out about this can really help us. So I will say, in my travels, most of it is operational deficiency. It usually starts by somebody saying, we can't do something in our legacy systems, or even one of our modern systems, and we have to figure out how to do that. With the whole idea being just get the information in the hands of the decision makers as quickly as you can. So just a quick go around the room, that's what I've seen. Every once in a while, though, it's a champion, and most of the time that champion comes from the IT department, right? They see some new technology, they see something, and they say, this is a better way of doing it. We need to do it. Now, Terry's the business representative in the room, so we have to watch what we say.
That's right, I've already been
because
crushed today.
Because a lot of times we in IT, right, we just take the opinion that we know how to get the plumbing in place before we need to find out what the business really is going to do with the data that we give them. So again, in my travels, most of the time that's some operational deficiency that leads us there. And it generally comes from a reporting perspective. People just say, I need these basic reports, I can't get them. We know that the policy admin systems are transactional, so they're very complex, right? No regular guy or gal is going to go in there and get reports. It's not going to happen. And then things just start to snowball from there. So, Erin, you go first. Where did it come from in your place?
Yeah, well, I shared some of the points before. So operational, right? Because the reporting system is based off of this. We quote modernized. I guess they're almost legacy now, but between 2012 and 2016, but then fed everything still into this whole COBOL thing. So you've got your operational issues. We were pretty good. I mean, we're again, we don't have that much data compared to some of these other companies are small, but I think we kind of outgrew everything, so you're kind of looking around, look what everybody else can do. And, just to get another slice of data, it's another ticket into IT, right? Yep. So you realize that. And again, I was talking about innovation. If you're going to do anything differently, you're not going to get it with what you currently have. So, so I think that, and as I was saying before, kind of getting into more of a regional profitability model and getting more accountability into the company. We just have the tools to be able to do it. So it was almost a no-brainer, I think, for us. We didn't really have to push to get it, and the CEO got it. And everybody knew how to do it. So.
Well, I go back to our days at Philly, and when you had come in, it was because I would say it was a combination of operational deficiency and just peer pressure, because we had vendors come in and show our C-level folks these pretty pictures, and then they said, we want that, and why can't we have that, right? So then we had to figure out, how that was going to happen.
Yeah.
So there really was no formal requirement. It was just, we want that.
That's
so, Daniel?
Yes.
So what we're doing is we're just going around the room and we're saying, how did this whole data strategy venture journey start in your place? Was it some operational deficiency, peer pressure? Like what was it that finally somebody said, we better do this?
Who's gone yet?
Erin,
you haven't heard my
So I
story.
came into the.
You can speak on that. They work on the same time.
Okay.
Dan Borges, CIO at Cisco Wayne. We've recognized the trend in the industry You know, the big guys are all doing data analytics and applying that to their risk selection and defining pricing for risks. And we recognize there's peer pressure to do it. You know, so that certainly is there. And a desire to continue to be viable in the industry in what we do and look for opportunity to grow that. And we feel that leveraging data is going to keep us in the game and give us opportunity to expand going forward.
Okay.
And I actually have a question on that. Is, one of the other possible scenarios that Erin and Frank had mentioned was a business need. Have we really experienced where we feel as our company is missing out on something other than what's possible in the future? Have we gotten a lot of pull from internal?
Well, not from internal, but it's proven that we will be selected against.
Oh yeah.
We will be selected against, and that's what we're hedging against by applying analytics.
I just wanted to confirm, because that was my impression of how things. We've had much more of a peer pressure approach than a business need that we see that we're missing out on. Just we see the future and where we would need to build that.
So those are like the business drivers.
So is that you're doing it more for risk selection and risk analysis, or to provide your C-level people with the information they need to run the company?
It's more the first, the former, where we want to understand our risks differently than we do today. More through the lens of data.
Competition and
more from the lens of data, so that TW has always been a very agent-oriented company.
Yep.
So we measure the agents first, as opposed to the risk. And that relationship is changing with the agency model changing and consolidations, and that's just going to continue and probably increase. We're going to lose the ability to leverage that relationship the agent has. It's going to chip away. And so we need to replace that with some other model that allows us to be able to measure those risks as accurately, if not more so.
because you feel like it'll be more direct business, or that's the direction you're going to have to go into?
Maybe. I think what we're doing now is to continue to do what we do well with agents in this changing landscape, but be prepared to take advantage of newer opportunities as we go forward.
You know what? If there is, the tab is open over at the bar. Should we do this at the bar?
Is that possible?
It's your call, Ron, with the boss.
Are we on? Are we live here?
Yes.
We are.
We can't do that. Sorry. I was only kidding.
I like the way you think.
Yeah, that part's not on the recording.
He added it.
Yeah, so, I mean, as you were talking a little bit about that it's peer pressure, is that what you're saying? Do you feel like it's external pressure to do it, or?
Yeah, it's that's not the only driver, but that's a big one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and the thing to go to direct, I mean, we're independent, in the independent model, and we believe in independent agents, but the feel of business is becoming more direct. Our independents are needing to be direct, and they're asking us to do more direct type things with the insureds that we've ever done, right? Are you experiencing that as well?
For sure, yeah. They want to shift more of the direct servicing to the company, just like the big companies have already with service centers and that sort of thing. It's coming to our doorsteps as well.
Yeah, and so when you start to do that, you have to. The challenge for us is to use analytics to go back and have those conversations with the agents to help them in the selection and the choosing of the process. I think every department needs to kind of be engaged in analytics. We're all data scientists, and we should be asking questions. The underwriting department is asking set of questions. Marketing, right? And we need to ask that. We need to help that with. We need to help their inquisitive mind. Like as a teacher goes and tries to get the kid to get like super inquisitive. That's what we need to do in IT, is get our business units to be inquisitive.
So along those lines, and I'm trying to stick to what we had in the outline just to get some.
Sorry.
But no, this is good stuff. So the next question I would have is then, if it's more like peer pressure and keeping up with the Joneses, which it sounds like, then how do you really look at the staffs you have and make the determination if you could really compete in doing that? Because when you look at it, it's go ahead.
Well, I think that there's some peer pressure, but I mean, for us, I think we were outgrowing what we have. I mean, we just couldn't get it. For us, we're very heavily relying on reinsurance because of the type of risk we underwrite. So when you're looking at gross and net, right, over here, and then you're trying to really dig in and you know, we'll get the numbers. You know, if the CEO wants something or the underwriter, we'll get them. Okay, but it might take 6 weeks to get it, you know, or somebody might come back and like, Erin, I can't figure out how to get this joined over here. So, you know, there's a little bit of peer pressure. Well, they can do it. Why can't we? But I do think you get to a point where like, you know,
The plumbing becomes a problem.
Yeah, we're getting more sophisticated in our thought patterns and we can't, you know, can't turn
Right, from an analytics perspective, we're pretty rich. We're sitting pretty, you could say, because of the data that we do have.
Mm-hmm.
Years and years of claims history and years of premium history. We just don't have the skill set to take it and derive some of those answers, right?
Right.
And that's where finding a partner, like you said, Erin, you know, partners are very valuable. And so we need to find a partner that's familiar with this process. You know, they can help us formulate our data in a way that they can then, through analytics, drive some of these answers. And that's critical. You know, so it's trusting the process. You know, to get to a better place after it's done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So Terry's a mole. She's the business person in the group. So what we say we have to watch.
Are you with him?
No, he's with me.
Right. I like the way you think. Are you guys together?
So having
I
worked
wanted
with
to hear what
In a metaphorical sense.
IT perspective is on this.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we're underwriting, finance, overall business.
I've been in
All
the
of the
business for
above.
a long time.
It's
I
an all of
started
the
in
above, right?
underwriting. I worked in a lot of different departments, very ops oriented. I don't know.
So at Philly.
Somehow I ended up in IT.
So when we were back at Philly, I was a CIO, and Terry was, when I first got there in '98, she was the business champion of the projects.
And the systems.
So if we were going to do a project, that kind of ran.
You brought her in.
Well,
She kicked ass.
she brought us in because it was really that way.
I don't.
Okay.
I believe that the business needs to drive the technical department.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
Not all the time. I don't think IT can drive the business. I don't think IT should be making the decisions on what operational systems they use. The business should do their work and figure out what systems support them well. And then IT can get involved and say, well, it's a crappy language, it's something.
Yeah, there is
Are those technical terms you're using?
Yeah.
Okay.
okay. In another way, there is no IT projects. They're all business projects.
No, there aren't IT
leverage
projects, there are more infrastructure.
Yeah, but they're very
But I always believe IT is there to support the business. And I'll give you an example. Right before we left, a new CIO came in and he said he was going to increase the bottom line to grow the company. Well, you know, that's what the marketing people do. That's what the salespeople do. That's what the underwriters do. That's what so I'm a business champion.
So the interesting part about that is that after 20 years of working with Terry, I was a jagged diamond at one time. Now I'm just a pond stone in order to and that's, you know, when we used to have status meetings, I'm sure you guys have them all. So you're sitting around the table, and month to month we go around the table, and the HR department would say, we're putting in a new HR system. Great, they would go around to the claim system, we're looking at a new claim. By the time it came to me, and IT was always last, they would say, what are you doing? And I would say, but we're doing what all they're doing. Right? But it never really counted. But I want to come back to the people aspect for a second. And Daniel, you probably have the most insight into this. It's a different type of person now to work with this data than we're used to dealing with. It's not a dev guy. It's not, and that I think sometimes is the fallacy where we say, okay, we can retool some people to just do that. It doesn't work that way, right? Because it's just not the same discipline, and it needs you can probably tell us better than that, but that's what I see.
Well, yeah, I would agree. I mean, that we have some developers that are working in analysts. I shouldn't say some, we have one or two. We have a couple that, we have one that is, just really interested in R and, machine learning and that kind of stuff. So you're going to use, IT is going to be in there for those kind of things. Because that's probably a little bit out of, but I support the business part of it. Unfortunately, our organization was reversed for most of the career that I
I
did.
think a lot of businesses are like
But I do think that we are getting more on the board where we're empowering the business.
or work together.
And the business is actually having to staff appropriately with business analysts and stuff to actually make those decisions. That where in our organizations, they previously had relied on IT to help, be the subject matter experts in a lot of those areas. So, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's like where we've come from and where we're going. But yeah, I do think that the kind of person that's in your panel that's an analyst is not necessarily a programmer. That is going to be that.
And that's the reason why I wanted to talk about this in the basics section, because with the basics, it's really what the roadmap is and how do you figure out where you want to go, which is a series of steps. It's inventory, right? What do we have? We got a lot of good claims data. It's all sitting there. We got it. But then there are a lot of folks who don't have that same ground to work off of, right? So before, there's a lot of good technology talked about this morning in the sessions. The problem is now we get to put a practical lens on it and say, how are we going to get there based on where we are? And I think as I look at that, the challenge still comes back to it's still the plumbing, because a lot of places are still struggling with the basic plumbing to get put in the position. And then you have the issue of how long do you wait before the plumbing, enables you to do it? Because we all know that, today no one's going to sign up for a multi-year project. People just don't, right? So when we had the roundtable discussion, we heard really some good success stories. But if you put a little bit of a different lens on it, how long are the current set of executives going to wait before those things become reality, which puts more pressure on us in the IT department? Because somehow we've got to move that needle forward, right? So, and when I look at these projects, the other issue I see is if we go out and want to look for a claim system or a policy admin system, what do we do? We do an RFI. We look up in certain, newsletter sources. We find some people, right? And then they come in and they show us something. So the people in the room see the end result. Before we even start, they see the end result, right? If you're going to rate a policy, it's going to look like this. If you do a claim, it's going to look like that, right? And then in order to get there, there's a certain set of requirements, which most of us know a lot of because they're kind of buried in our legacy systems, or we have some starting point to get there. But when you start to talk about these analytics of projects, and with all the technology that's out there, and all the vendors that are out there, and all the approaches that are out there, that becomes even harder. Because now when you get in front of somebody, they're going to say, what am I going to get? What am I getting? Frank, you're asking me to sign up for 2 years and X amount of dollars. What am I getting? And I say, insight. And they just look at me and go, okay, that's a good thing. But what's that going to do? So what I see as part of the struggle is you still have that business layer, the requirements layer of what it is you're going to get when you get there. And in these projects, I'm an IT guy, so I'm looking to do all the cool stuff as quickly as I can. I produce something that's really neat. I go in front of somebody and say, look what I can do. And they go, that's great, but now I need to do it on a bigger scale. And then I have a problem, right? So I see that as a real issue. And we did a presentation for PAM a couple of years ago. It was the data strategies seminar, right? And that was the basics of the basics. We couldn't get more basic than that. But there was a couple facts in there, and one of the big facts was how many of these projects fail. The bigger projects for analytics fail. And I think the reason for that is what I just said, which is no one has like a clear vision of what it is we're going to get at the end to be able to say this was a success. And when I look at the organizations that I've been in, that's always been difficult to do, because when you sit there and as soon as you show somebody the fancy chart or the picture or the graph, their mind starts to go to the next step automatically, even though they don't have that nice thing, right? Like when the speaker this afternoon, when he rattled off how to go forward and do all those cool things, I'm sitting there going, I'm on the bandwagon, I'm with you. But then I'm thinking, how are we going to do that? Like, how are we going to do that? Like the information from Zwillow, like, am I allowed to scrape that site and not get in any trouble and pull down the same data that they're publishing? I don't know the answer.
Well, the problem is, my guess is you can buy it.
Yeah, right.
Right.
But then there's the cost factor of buying it.
Right.
That's not cheap.
But that's
not
data
cheap.
you don't own.
That's right.
What they're trying to figure out is, at least initially, I think, is the data that you have.
That's right.
And how you can use it.
Yep.
So
That's
at least
the-
you don't have to pay for it.
That's the plumbing, Ron.
You've already paid big for it.
So if we went around the room today with all the folks and asked how many people have one system to go off of, no one's going to say they have one. Right. So right off the bat, we've got problems.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the issue. And then when I look at those projects to try to answer that question, because after we did the presentation, people would say, well, why do you think, Frank, that 90% of these projects fail? And I said, this is what I was talking about this morning, Ron. I think when it comes to a project like that, or any project, there's only two phases. There's if it's going to work and when it's going to work. And most projects get killed in if it's going to work because people don't believe it's going to work. And having been somebody who's been sitting in front of executives trying to explain that, that's really painful. And when people don't think it's ever going to work, right, they're more apt to pull the plug and say, I'm not. But when it's only a matter of time, when you sit there and go, yeah, we kind of missed this quarter, but we're definitely doing next quarter, and here's why. And you can convince them, they stick with you, right? They reach in their pocket, they pay you money, and they do it. And I think that's why in this space, it's going to take a while before you start to see some of the commonality come up and people be able to put things in quickly that can hit the whole organization and not just one piece of the organization, right? Because we still have the same problem, and that is when you try to get all the data, that's what takes a really long time, right? To get all the data. So you sit there and someone's saying, yeah, but I can't get this to work. And then you say, but do you need that? Do you really need that to do what you want to do? So, if we asked our executives, if you said, you get a really good approximation immediately, or you get the exact answer you want 2 weeks from now, what do you want? Right? So I think that the separation, as our speaker said today, which is great, the difference between data and analytics, a lot of us are still in the data camp before we can get to the point that we do it. So I think my takeaways from today was that as I see these projects, I still ask those same basic questions, which is the first one that we ask, like, why are we doing this? Because that sets the expectation level, right? It's like the comparative rater, in all of us have heard it, right? So if your boss comes back and says, these 7 companies are doing comparative rating, we've got to get in the ballgame too. Let's get on that project. And you go, okay.
Why?
Why? Because
that would be my first question is why?
Because they believe that they need to be in that game where people don't think you exist.
So when you look at the comparative rating tools, as an example,
yeah,
it's always the largest. It's always going to be probably the top 100 writers in a particular line of business, homeowners, auto.
Yeah.
So most of the mutuals that we have are not going to even be close. You get the state farms, yes, and nationwides, yeah. But for the most part, that's irrelevant information.
Right, and I'm just trying to make.
And remember, like Progressive who did it for a reason, because what it is, it's an underwriting tool. Oh, that person who just came to me, my rating structure doesn't fit the best type of risk I want.
Right.
So guess what? I don't mind if they go over there, because they didn't really fit my model of the type of best kind of thing.
What's funny is we had, I don't know, very few policy admin customers left, which is okay. So 4. 2 of them are using Verisk comparative rating.
Mm.
And the question is why? Because 1, you're commoditizing the business. right? Because when you get those 4 replies back, all you really care about is the price of that. So, and they spend a lot of money doing it.
And I don't even know how that works very well. Like a company like yours, a good $200 million a year company, you're geographically restricted.
So just
You know what I'm saying? So how helpful is that?
I'm comparative rating is one of the things that I've been passionate about. So we've been doing comparative rating for probably over 10 years.
Do you use theirs?
We use Vert4,
Yeah.
Easy Links, and Applied now. Easy Links and Applied are the same one and stuff. So regardless of that, comparative rater from an analytical point of view, whether you get any business at all, it tells you, like you get, a lot of times you get chosen even though you don't get in the top 3. So you're getting, like, for a company of like my size that has a lot less data to choose off of, I'm getting a lot larger data that I can choose, that I can see.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we're getting data and quotes from, you know, tons of, everybody that's, you know, our agents and all the carriers that they're rating, you know, we're in there and we might be lower. Well, we know that we're lower, we know where we're at, we're lower, but we know what we're missing. And so with that data is a huge amount of insight that we can, it's like, how can we come back?
But you have a plan.
So, well, yeah, we're building a plan. So the thing is, do we have that skill set internally within our organization to do that? We do, but we're so busy with other projects and other things that we're doing. We brought in an outside firm to walk with our leadership team, analyze those pieces. Like MCA right now is going through and analyzing our personal auto product and coming up with strategies and stuff like that to, you know, to choose the right level of business. Because, you know, we still don't want everything.
You want the ones that fit your parameters.
Fit our parameters. And we have a big relationship with our agents. And so there's a lot of our agents that write business with us because they knew who we are and they're, you know, like the way we settle claims and the kind of company that we're out there putting them with us. So we want to have that, but the market's changing. They're getting younger producers coming in that are different and they operate differently. And so the other piece with comparative rater is like the consumer rate book. I don't know if you've heard of those.
But you know, the last time I bought new auto policy or home policy, 1982.
And I bet you still do with your agent.
Well,
actually USAA. So I don't have to deal with an agent. But yeah, I mean,
but last year was the biggest year that people switched their auto policies because their car's sitting at home, and for companies like
and they had time,
and they're in there and they're, you know, like, well, like, give me a better rate.
Gosh, didn't you wish you would have known that at the beginning of the pandemic and figured that out, that hey, people are really, you'd be advertising like crazy.
So I mean, but what I'm saying is comparative raters are not just for
the consumer.
Well, they're not just for, like, you know, being in those top 3, although that's important. The other thing is that consumer rate quote is really key for us independent agents because it puts the buy button back on that agent's page, the agent's site. So when the agent goes in and they say buy now, the insured could go to the agent's website, they hit buy now, and it goes to all their carriers, and then they define rules, and we get that quote right away. So it's like a real-time quote. The insured gets that real-time policy quote, and it could theoretically come up and get issued or whatever in real time.
You know what?
So that's more of the direct.
Remember, you guys are invested in this like you wouldn't believe. So I'm the outsider here, yeah. And I hear that and I say to myself, boy, an agent doesn't want to do their job. They just want this computer to spit out.
So,
and if they can do it faster.
I want to turn it on you a little bit. I'm not sure that the agent doesn't want to. The insured doesn't want to. The insured wants to do the things quickly. I look at myself as an insured. I mean, would I buy Goodville if I wasn't working for Goodville? Because I want to go and get, would I be going into some configurator? And that's why, personal lines have been really super competitive in that. I think just because our demographic, the way people buy insurance, you got cars and discounts and people are doing Ubers and things like that. Carriers have to learn how to figure that out, right? Anyways, I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's what you're doing is you want to figure out what data you have and then how can you use it. Because I was always thinking this data analytics was really more about figuring out how to create your rating system to be more exacting, more discriminating. That's what I originally thought, but then I think it was when you were talking about really looking at process improvements, looking at where, how can we use this data to be more effective and efficient, looking for the sometimes the low-hanging fruit on how to do things better. But I think part of it is, like you're saying, is, the people that are in underwriting, for example, they're very good at probably what they do. But does anybody actually sit there and map out how exactly the underwriting process works, and then start thinking about, well, does this make sense anymore? Does this really help me anymore? Does this, so now you can then use the data to help analyze where you may want to,
change your process.
Right, exactly. Because that's where I see the money, or even add to your process if it adds value.
The real big thing is, I think commercial lines, you're going to tell me it's never going to happen, but commercial lines is heading into a comparative rating kind of.
Actually, I said I was talking to Dan, and I said probably on small commercial, why not?
We will start.
Her business, forget.
The thing is about agents are getting, these other carriers, these larger carriers are able to quote and do business quicker, with technology. We can commercial is a large data set, and often there's like this conversation back and forth. And as we start replacing that conversation with analytical reports that we're pulling from Zillow and whatever, that conversation gets smaller and smaller. And it's going to fit in a window to where you can have that dialogue with 10 carriers on a commercial quote and get it quickly. And it will start with your Bobs and stuff.
Right.
It's going to happen in your dwelling fire.
Well, think about it. If you have their homeowner's policy, let's say you do have it, and they want to open up a small business, you already know their claims history if they have one. You already know their risk profile, So it's like, how much underwriting you really need to do.
So go back to the comparative rating point. If you look at what we can do with it, is right now it's like a one-to-one relationship. You rate my home, I give you my home rate, and there you go, right? Mm-hmm. But as companies start to have multiple different rating companies and they create different products, they might have one homeowner product that's geared to this, and one homeowner's that's geared to this. And then, well, they already do. But so when you rate, you're just basically going to say, are you going to, you might have asked for this, but I'm going to give you this one instead as a second quote to just, this might be a better presentation.
So you're actually giving consumers more, thinking they have more knowledge than they have. When they walk into Nationwide, my guess is all they want is a nationwide policy. They don't know there's 14.
They don't care.
Right. That there's 14 operating companies.
We were given a time's up about 5 minutes ago.
Well, but she works for me.
The final thing I would add is I believe agents are getting to a point where they don't want to have to make such a granular decision either.
Right.
Give me 4 options.
Right.
And I'll pick one for my insurance.
Yeah, and they know the company. They have a relationship with the company, and they'll sell it to the insurer. Yes. And they'll add their value that way.
See, you're kind of a more traditional insurance model. You're almost going toe to toe with the big nationals and the big regionals, because you have that product. You go up to Tuscarora or Wayne, they have a very unique demographic. They're doing homes that, they're more niche, so they can be a little bit different. You have to compete with the fast, the people who know how to do it fast. So it's
at least on our personal life.
Well, that's what I mean, on the personal. Well, it's commodity for the most part. So
we do believe that insurers, if they knew kind of the service and quality that they get with Goodville, they would choose Goodville over the top. But
what insurance consumer ever thinks that an insurance company provides good service? Because think about it. I know we have to go, but that's okay. It's just your whole like
you don't want to talk about data analytics.
but it is sort of all of this is data driven. I understand that. But you think about the only time they really need to use you is when something bad happened, and as a result, they're in a crappy mood. no matter how nice you are or how quickly you can get that check in their hands, the problem is it wasn't fast enough, in their mind's eye. And then sometimes they're squabbling over some of the costs and the claims and stuff like that, and that friction there, you can't win it, but it's part of your job to make sure you're not overpaying and stuff like that. So I don't know how you ever, get the customer satisfaction thing to be the driver that takes them to you. USAA did it, but remember, it was a membership model.
Did it to me on the personal line.
Did they see? Progressive to me was all about pricing. That's what they did.
Their customer experience and
I just read an article about how terrible it's been lately.
Yeah. Well, I haven't had a claim
That's why.
a couple of years, but I've
Good
had
for you.
3 with them, and it's been very good. It was, just flawless.
So
Little human interaction, just the right amounts of human interaction when I needed
When you
it.
need it, yeah.
Yeah, they really designed
I mean,
well.
I'm not going to say Goodville pay claims shouldn't, but we do look at the heart behind why the insured is insured and what we agreed to insure and try to do it to more the spirit.
And I get that.
And so you get that, and in a large organization, the larger you get, even Goodville would have, we have to, we get more automated and the computer makes decisions. You lose, you have to really try to.
When I was in the department, one of the complaints we would get about from the medium to small companies is on personal lines now, especially on auto, and the large companies is the large companies don't really care what they're paying. So if you have damage to your roof because of hail, right? The State Farm is going to say, the loss adjustment costs on this are so damn high. Write a check. I'm going to write the check for $15,000, and I'm going to wind up saving $5,000 on, an engineer and all this other kind of stuff, and it's going to settle within probably where it needed to settle anyway.
Yeah.
The small companies can't afford to do that. And it puts them at it. So we actually got complaints from companies about that being an unfair practice.
Oh, sure. I mean, it would happen if you had a hailstorm, and it was the neighboritis.
One neighbor got it and the other.
Well, I'll tell you this is but that's
We'd be heading to.
yeah, we'd be telling this quick story because you guys as insurance companies.
You have to excuse me because I'm going to die in 10 minutes if I don't go get some sugar.
You do that. You do that.
That's my alarm.
Good luck.
So
Thank you, Erin.
there was this huge hailstorm out in western PA.
We're not recording.
Yeah, we did a couple of years ago, and maybe 300 or 400 houses